Our evening began in Peter Sechel's comfortable study in his New York townhouse, where the candlelight was just right, the hi-fi was in the background, and the wine was delicious.
Hi, this is Tim of the 1916 Company, and I am in Los Angeles at the Rensilva Listening Studio. I'm here with a multiple Grammy nominee and winner. He's the founder of Black Pumas. Adrian, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Tim.
It does go well with the chicken.
Delicious again, Peter.
This is really cool because it's two things I love, music and watches. But we're going to stick to the script. Let's talk watches first.
Okay.
So tell me, how did you get started as a watch collector? Did it begin early? Were you into watches before you owned them? Was it childhood?
When I was a child, I was not totally into watches, to be totally honest. I'm fairly new to really kind of paying attention to watches. I would say like within the last 10 years, is when I really started to really kind of pay attention more and to the subtleties and the nuance of like having something on your wrist like that is not just for function, but for style and the art of it. So at some point, the nicest watch I did have that was a Tag Heuer, the one with the links that are kind of like, they go like this.
Yeah.
I had one of those as a gift from my grandfather that I used to wear. And that was like the nice watch. I actually still have that watch.
Now, was that your grandfather's watch?
No, so my grandfather had a Rolex that he handed to my father one time at a party. So like not my father's father, but my mother's father handed it to him. And my father eventually handed that to me. And that's one of my prized possessions for sure, because I think with watches, a lot of it is really like the story and the meaning, behind it. I wish I could be buying the most expensive watches out there, but to me a lot of it is really just the meaning and the story behind it. So that one does not get worn all the time, really special occasions, just because I'm mortified if I travel so much that I did have it with me one time and I left it in an Uber, and you can't replace that. There's no value on that. I mean, I could buy one, but it's not the same thing as the story of what it was.
Of course, you can never be your grandpa's watch again. Mm-hmm. So after that close call, you save grandpa's watch for special occasions.
That's the only special occasion. I wear it at home a lot, but I travel so much that I don't, I can't afford to have that lost.
No, I agree with you. I've had tourbillon watches that I would wear to the dollar store, but grandpa's watch, which probably costs, I don't know, 1/50th as much, and only goes out for special occasions.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
So when you did start buying watches for yourself and you were getting into the watch collector hobby in earnest, where did you look first?
I think when I really, really went down the rabbit hole was a lot of pop culture and movies. So I remember noticing a watch, Daniel Craig, I think it was an Omega, in a James Bond film. I was like, that is so cool. It's so James. It just seems like you can this is before Apple watches, but it was like, it felt like you could do everything on that little watch. And I went down the rabbit hole and I found this website that was a database of every, not just watches, but it did have every watch worn in every scene, I believe, that ever was worn in a James Bond film. I just thought that was the coolest thing. And from there, I bought, which I think was what they think is the first watch ever seen in a James Bond film. It was a Sean Connery one, and it was a Gruen that he wears in a scene in a casino. And I bought that one. It was like, I thought it was so cool to be able to have that story. So then from there, I bought the Hamilton Pulsar, which was the first digital watch I think ever made.
The famed on-demand LED digital display from the 70s.
And that was also from a James Bond film. From there, I would just read these websites, and I stumbled on one that was just a bunch of watches in film. And the fascinating thing to me is that a lot of those watches sometimes were the actor's own. Obviously nowadays every company's trying to get their watch, Omega on a James Bond film or whatever. But
it's always placed.
Yeah, exactly. But a lot of that, like I know a lot of Daniel Craig's fashion and James Bond was his own clothes that he, wardrobe that he had. But I stumbled on one that was a watch that Al Pacino wore in The Godfather that I believe was his own. And it was this Omega Constellation Pie Pan. I saw it and was like, there's so much about it. I love the movie, I love his acting, and I love the watch. I am a fan of silver jewelry. His was gold. I just kind of like silver over gold, so I was able to locate that same watch with the rice bead. I've traveled the world with this one and I've never had any issues with it.
So now this watch has been places with you. You've got that original sort of Godfather association, but what new memories have you built around this watch?
Oh my God, this has been the watch I've worn the most over the last 4 years or something like that. I mean, everything I do, my band, Black Pumas, just toured all of 2024. So this watch has been to, I don't even know how many countries, how many continents and stuff. So it's just when I look down, it's what I always imagine on my wrist. I can't imagine anything else, It's so easy to maintain. I've literally never had an issue with it, other than at some point it came a little loose here, which for a watch from 1962, it's incredible that it's lasted this much, and it gets daily wear. I mean, it's really, I wouldn't say it's taking a beating, but I don't treat it too fragile,
No, but it's great to be able to wear a vintage watch every single day. I mean, it's got that enduring quality. It was someone else's before you. It's yours now. And watches, essentially, they go on and on and on. It's a little bit like music in that tastes may change with time, but the art endures. So, you chose a very specific album for a one watch, one album theme today, and could you just explain to me how mentally you linked the Constellation to Check Your Head by the Beastie Boys?
It took me a second to really find the record, and I don't know that there's a lot of crossover in feel for the two, but these are absolutely my desert island things. If I had to die with one watch and one album, it would be that album and this watch.
Now, it's definitely a desert island album because it's got 20 tracks, but you had a couple that you thought were interesting. Take me through some of these.
Yeah, Groove Holmes was a really meaningful one at the time. The addition of Mark Ramos Nishida, aka Money Mark, as a keyboard player to this album is huge. I think he needs to get a lot of recognition for what he contributed to this record and for the band. I mean, I think they acknowledge it for sure, but I think when people think of the Beastie Boys, he's not on the cover, and I just think of him almost like Billy Preston to the Beatles, in that the Beatles needed, as we actually saw it in the Get Back film, they needed a spark at the time. The Beatles did, they needed it. You can see it, you can feel it in that film and the rehearsals. And then when Billy Preston came in, it's like everybody just came to life. And to me, Money Mark was like that to the Beastie Boys. When he came in, I think he added so much. Groove Holmes in particular, at the time, I had no idea what that meant, Groove Holmes. I was like, maybe they call each other Holmes and they like to groove. I don't know, but it was a keyboard player named Richard Groove Holmes. And they were at the time not only sampling old records, but I think at this point they're now trying to write compositions in that style and jam, and it opened the doors for me for finding jazz funk and rare groove, as they call it, and just all this music that they were sampling at the time, but not treating it like just a sample, but acknowledging and actually paying attention to it as a work of art on its own. So that, this for myself and a lot of my friends and contemporaries, I think opened up our eyes and ears to starting to listen to jazz music and digging up all this music that they were into. And at the time I had never really listened to anything like that. I was listening to rap and rock and roll and whatever, but so that was huge for me. And I still think there's a whole scene almost that they created of playing music like Groove Holmes that came immediately after that. So I don't know that they sometimes get enough credit for that.
Our evening began in Peter Sechel's comfortable study in his New York townhouse.
So Blue Nun, I think part of hip hop, particularly at that time, particularly in the early '90s, was the every hip hop group had their skits. So it was these things were they would sample something from a movie or a TV show, or they would put something funny in it. Those kind of things were hit or miss. It's there's a lot of there was groups like De La Soul that were incredible with their skits, and the whole thing was funny. There'd be a song and then there'd be a comedy bit, and it all just plays. And I think a lot of it was really hip hop, particularly at that time, was big on pop culture references. It was obviously it's not just sampling music, but it was sampling everything. It was putting you in their world, when you're listening to Wu-Tang Clan and they're playing kung fu samples, it feels like you're sitting there watching kung fu movies with them. And I think with the Beastie Boys, they have such a reverent sense of humor that a lot of times it was the weirdest. I mean, I didn't even know what Blue Nun was. I was like, what is this? Where do they even get this stuff from? But it's funny and it sort of makes sense. So I just love the whole thing, particularly since we're talking about Ren Silva consoles, about how they talk about a glass of wine and the hi-fi and, you know, the music on the hi-fi and all that.
It's the ambiance.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. With Pass the Mic, I think you have to give it the context of where they were in their career with the Beastie Boys. You can hear them kind of maturing where they're like, we're just doing this for ourselves and this is the most important thing and we got to be true to ourselves and not try to fall into the pressure of making music for a commercial sense.
And then from the sense of composing the underlying music, it sounds simple, but it isn't really.
No, it isn't. As they say, it's a musical masterpiece. So I think even by today's standards, you hear them playing the live instruments, you hear them, it's funky, but it's also like fuzzy. And it has a DJ. Just shortly after this, when every band that started having a DJ, to me it felt terrible and so forced, just kind of ridiculous. But to me, that the DJ scratches on this song just sound like a lead guitar player or whatever. It just sounds like a band to me playing in the room. Everything that's going on, if you dissect the music and the production of that song, is just brilliant to me all these years later.
So we have this sort of parallel idea of the music that stays with you forever and the watch that stays with you for, well, a very substantial time. And as your musical career continues to evolve, you're going to continue to encounter new watches. So on the horological front, you grow your career in music, you grow your journey as a watch collector. I'm curious, where do you see that journey leading? What's interesting to you now in terms of watches?
A lot of the moon phase dials to me are really beautiful and really unique. And this idea of like knowing the moon phase on your watch, I haven't quite pulled the trigger on one, but I have quite a few saved. I kind of tend to like left field things like that. I've really been saving a lot of and eyeballing. I'm probably going to make a move pretty soon here on a couple of old Eberhard & Co's, which I think just are stunning. Even just the font and the layout of the logo is beautiful to me. But a lot of those are just kind of these like really unique watches where you don't see people take chances like that anymore. And then I'm always into the classics, just like same with music. I try to go, I dig deep, but there's the reason that certain things, like as I'm staring here at a Grant Green album and a Thelonious Monk album and all these classic Blue Note jazz records, there's a reason they're classics. And I've been really, really obsessed with the root beer Rolex GMT. I have a friend who had one and he got me down. I have so many saved that I've been like almost pulling the trigger on, but I haven't quite. But the root beer color to me is so unique, different from the Pepsi. I just think that I just love that color.
Adrian, thank you so much for your time and insights. We really appreciate this. And thank you to our hosts, Ren Silva out in LA. Until next time.
Thank you.
Time out.